Welcome everybody. This is a walkthrough of the procedure that was issued earlier in the spring of this year, so a few months ago. We are required to revisit this every once in a while to retrain everybody as we go, and whenever there are significant updates to let you know of those updates. So this procedure has been updated, sometimes slightly, sometimes significantly, with additions over the past few months, and you have received the most updated versions, but you have not received an actual tutorial like this one yet. So we're going to walk through some of those changes, but we're also going to pay attention to some of the things that remain the same, but that are very critical for us to keep in mind as we continue on this school year. So clarifying that this is not the policy, this is the procedure. And the procedure has to abide by everything that the policy says, but it can say more. It can be more specific about what we mean by whatever the policy said. So if you read the policy, which is properly posted on our website, and you have a question about what something might mean there, then chances are that the answer for that is here in this document. And if the answer is not here, then it would be a great opportunity to bring it to our attention so that we can reflect the answer here. So let's begin. If nothing else, it's important for you to remember that being a sanctuary school or a sanctuary district, it doesn't mean that we're going to get in the way of immigration enforcement. The United States has its laws, and the people in power decide how to enforce those laws. Some people may agree or may disagree in their own interpretation of the law, but when they've said this is what it means to enforce the law, then we should comply. So we should not put ourselves in a position of danger by going explicitly against a law that has been interpreted in a certain way, and when the government has decided they will enforce it in a very specific way. But we can do, however, is do everything else that the law doesn't prevent us from doing, and that means, for example, many things that are said in this procedure, like we're not willingly going to do something we're not being required to do by law, like sharing student information, like helping an immigration officer apprehend someone, giving them information so that they can. Nothing says that we have to willingly support immigration enforcement. But that's not to say that we're going to stand in the way of immigration enforcement. A properly executed judicial warrant is enough for them to be able to come into our building. More to that later, but just because we are a sanctuary school district doesn't mean that we get to ignore a properly executed judicial warrant. A judicial warrant allows basically anybody, even ICE, but any law enforcement entity to have access anywhere the warrant says they can access. Normally, these warrants are not all-encompassing. It's not like a warrant can say you may access all of the Winooski School District. That's not the case. I would highly doubt that that can ever be the case. But we will comply with whatever the warrant says. Now, if there's no warrant, then we don't just let anyone in our spaces. Also sharing information. We don't just share information with anyone, even if they are law enforcement. They have to have a specific formalized way in which they can access that information, and if they have it, then we will share that information. But if they don't have it, then we don't. That can be sometimes a misunderstanding. People accuse the Winooski School District, like other districts that are trying to do the right thing, of trying to break the law. That's just misinformation. It's or intentional misleading when people say that, because at no point, nowhere in this procedure and nowhere in our policy does it say that we will not comply with the law. What it does say is that we will not do things that we are not legally required to do. And so please remember that. And when you are confronted with a situation that you're not sure. Is this legal? Is this illegal? Like, what is this the right interpretation of the law? Is this what a sanctuary school should be doing? Don't try and answer that question for yourself. If you are ever confronted with that question, with a difficult situation, an immediate question in front of you, follow our three-word rule here, or three-word practice, which is pause, involve, and protect. And the most important one, they go in order of importance, because the most important one is to pause. Pausing doesn't mean inaction, that you're just gonna watch somebody be beaten to death. That's not what it means. It means that you're not just going to rush to something that's not an immediate exigency, or whatever, what an immediate danger. If, for example, let me illustrate this in the easiest, the most straightforward way. You are approached by somebody at the parking lot who looks like someone's parent, because they don't look like an immigration officer. They don't look like anything. They look like some guy. And they're like, hey, do you know, are you a teacher here? And you're like, yeah, yeah. By any chance, do you know this so and so, maybe a student name? Do you know if they are a student here? Pause. you you might be in front of an immigration enforcement officer, and you should not just be volunteering information that's not for you to give. Uh, and it might be just somebody's uncle looking for that student. Fine, and that could be it. And they're like, you know, uh, you could ask who they are and all that, but there's all sorts of things you could do to make sure, but still it's best just to not do anything when it comes to questions like that. And what you do instead is say, I can't give you that information, or like, I don't know, or I'm sorry, I'm on my way home, I cannot help, whatever. Or just don't do anything. Be weird and awkward like I am sometimes, and just move on. Um, and then as soon as you have a chance, move to step 2 of our pause, involve, protect, involve. If it feels weird, or if it feels like something's odd here, it likely is because something's off, and you should involve. And that means immediately let the school know. And by the school, I mean your immediate supervisor, myself ideally, but if you cannot access me, then any administrator. If nothing else, at least share it with one more peer, with someone else who's a licensed or a properly employed person of the WSD. Somebody else should know. You need to involve more people when a question like that arises, when something's a little odd, when you're not sure. Then when moving to the protect part of this approach, in the example I just gave of a random person in the parking lot asking you whether so and so is a student here, or whether you know of so and so, it seems like you don't. The obvious translation, the obvious interpretation of the word protect wouldn't apply here, because you don't see anyone in danger. You don't have to do anything additional. And maybe you're correct. Maybe there's nobody's in immediate danger, but there may be other situations where you witness somebody who is very scared, even if nobody's doing anything to them, but somebody's scared. And you probably need to act on that in order to protect them. And by that, I don't mean an officer is trying to apprehend one of your students or one of their legal guardians in the parking lot, whatever it is. It doesn't mean that you go and wrap their arms around them and you don't let them take them. Please don't do that. That would be a type of obstruction. That would you be interfering with an arrest, and you are not allowed to do that. And we as a district are not asking you to do that. In fact, we are discouraging you from doing that, because that would be unlawful. That is not what protect means. In fact, that could actually make it more dangerous for you, for the person you think you're protecting, and for everybody involved. This could cause all sorts of issues more than you probably think you're helping. What protect means is doing everything in your power to do what you can do without venturing into illegal behavior, like record, witness, involve people, like in step two. Speak. You can use your voice, especially if you are a U.S. citizen, if you are somebody who belongs to more predominant communities, if you are racially white, if you speak English as a first language, if you are male, if you have a lot of characteristics that add an additional layer of protection in that moment. I wish I didn't have to say that, but I wish that wasn't the world we live in where I have to say that. But if you are aware of certain layers of additional protection that you might have, then consider using your voice by, you could, keeping a distance, a reasonable distance, because you don't want to obstruct again. You can remind people of their rights. You can remind authorities of their responsibilities. You can ask questions. You can do all sorts of things until you are asked to stop or you are threatened. And then you can make a decision what to do after that. Again, trying to keep yourself safe. There are more in-depth trainings that many of our partners give around this. National networks you can Google much of what to do in high stress situations of that kind, and what your rights are as a U.S. citizen who is witnessing something, not only who is being, when you're being a victim of that kind of situation, but also somebody who's witnessing it. And I highly recommend that you read more about that, watch more videos about what to do, go to some of the websites like our partners at the ACLU, and read about what you can do. And all of those things that you can do in the moment are the quintessential definition of what protection can mean without you putting yourself in danger. But protection means more than that, and we were going to talk about examples of that, of pause, involve, protect in other cases, like in the classroom. We're not talking about an extreme like an immigration officer venturing into your classroom. That's very unlikely to happen, but we still expect you to think of these three words in any setting in the schools. And protection sometimes can simply mean getting to know who your students are, recognizing them, seeing them through our curriculum, having creating spaces where everybody is welcome, and not reminding people that they should be thankful for for just existing, right? That sounds funny, but it sounds like uh, it sounds silly, but in reality, many of us, especially young children who are not from dominant communities, go about life being made feel like they have to be grateful for existing, like they should be grateful for just not being physically assaulted. They have to be grateful for entering into the school and being educated. And that means that we're sending messages, both explicit and implicit, that that's what they should be feeling. And that is the opposite of protection. So the word protection here is reminding people that they are the owners of this institution. They are the reason we are here. We owe our best work to every single one of our students, and we don't categorize our students in tiers of how much somebody deserves what. Every single student in our classrooms, in our buildings, has the same amount of, what can I call it, entitlement to everything that we provide to them. Every single one of them should have, by the end of the day, their dignity intact, regardless of who they are. And there are some students, reflecting much of what the rest of our society is, that might go home and never think about how grateful they are that they are allowed to exist. But there are many others that do go home and think about, oh, what a great nation. People around me are so nice to me, even though they shouldn't be. Some students, some people actually feel like that, and that means that we are not doing uh, good enough a job to send those explicit and implicit messages that we are all entitled to the same level of protection and support. Our schools exist to support every single one of our students, and the word protection should be playing out every single day. It should not just play out when there's an imminent threat of immigration enforcement action around our schools. So when I walk down hallways in schools, when I hear conversations, when I see what's going on in classrooms, when I read a lesson plan, I want to be reminded that I'm in a school that's called itself a sanctuary school. And I want to be reminded that what we mean by protect is that we consider every single student here worthy of our investments, worthy of our time, and not categorized by their background in implicit and explicit ways. Let's move on to some specifics. Just a quick reminder that we have technically there is a school information site, which is, we don't really have an office or anything, but the center of the lobby in the area where our Patrice manages, that's supposed to be where questions go and they get funneled to the different areas depending on what the question is. Patrice is on short-term leave right now, but I'm hoping he will be back soon, so we can resume that him as a point of contact. But in the meantime, uh, the district office and our any administrator really in that area should be the recipient of questions related to immigration. So whether they come from families, from students, from staff members, please refer those questions to any administrator. They usually come to me, and then we go from there. Know Your Right resources have been widely disseminated since we issued these procedures last spring. But every opportunity you find, you yourself in your classroom or in the work that you do, any ideas you might have on how we can continue to disseminate this kind of information, both through our official channels and through our day-to-day, please let us know. We take advantage of every chance we get, but we don't always know all the opportunities that might exist there. So let's continue this both through formal and informal channels. We hopefully should be putting together one or two more events for the remainder of the year, or partnering with other institutions that are putting events together. I know one is coming up in a couple of weeks, actually, here in Winooski, in partnership with Migrant Justice. I'll be there, and there might be a couple more in the works, and we will make sure that we disseminate those dates in advance. But if there are more opportunities, both locally or small group, large group, doesn't matter, please keep us in the know, and we will support in whatever way we can. So the video I'm making right now is actually pretty much a response to this part of the procedure, where I'm supposed to communicate with you any updates to the procedures. I'm supposed to issue this procedure, or we are supposed to be familiar with this procedure. So this is part of this part of the training. However, if you personally feel like you still have more questions, that you are not quite sure about what to do in a specific situation related to your own work, how some of these things might apply to your own role. If you have a question about, like last year, we didn't have anything on buses, for example. This came from staff members saying, like, we want to know what happens during, and now we have a section on that here, and so on. That's how it's supposed to work. We don't have a a template that somebody is giving us that we can follow. Like this is really happening from your feedback, all of us working together to figure out how to best be prepared for any situations. So I invite you to continue to review this procedure. We're reflecting as much as we can in here, and please do what you can to at least give videos like this a listen, to be reminded of what we're supposed to be doing at the district. This part of the procedure, luckily, it's been some months now, and we have not had to activate it. So hopefully that continues to be the same for the months to come, for the years to come. But if there is a separation of a child and their guardians, we have had legal guardians be detained, and some of them even deported. But there's the cases we've had, they've been such that there's at least someone else and another caregiver still um, staying put and being able to provide the support for the child that gets left behind. So we have not had to go to the extreme in which we have to find a way to figure out how to support the child when the state takes custody of the child. We have not been in that situation yet, and hopefully we will never have to be. But as our procedure says, we will activate the highest level of supports that we can provide if that time comes. And similarly, we did quite a bit of work monitoring families that needed guardianship paperwork in case of a separation. That work continues to be monitored, but much of the initial work took place in the first few months. So this part is very important because this might happen regardless of, it's likely that when a legal guardian of one of our students or somebody in our student's family is detained and deported, chances are that that's going to happen outside the school grounds. It's going to happen in the community, and that can have ripple effects on everybody, including our own students in our classrooms, even if it's not their families. Because this Winooski is a tight knit community. Everybody knows each other. Our students know each other. They're friends with each other. This can happen pretty. Can be traumatizing for everybody involved, including the community. And so please, this is something that has been updated and improved. So this is the most up-to-date process for what happens if you do gain knowledge of a potential deportation or a detainment or a deportation or that already took place. First, you notify me. If you cannot get a hold of me, notify any administrator because they know to notify me as well. You will want to, and at this point, that might be the end of it, right? Like it's the pause, involve, protect. By the time you involve, that's probably the end of it for the time being. Then whoever that administrator is or you yourself could consult with the family whether they're comfortable with our involvement. And then we go from there. I'm not going to read every single part here, but the most important thing is that you make us aware, and then we will go from there. We have the ability to support the family in many ways. We have a rapid response team, and we have even resources that we have available to support families depending on the severity of the case. Like I said, we have a rapid response team. It's a pretty it's not public for many reasons, and only properly hired and employed staff of the WSD are part of that rapid response team. I ask that if you are not sure whether you can help or not in the middle of the night or on a weekend, or that it's okay. You don't have to be in that team. You can ask us, send us an email if you want to be in a rapid response team, only if you know that you can be actively participating in it. If you are not, I there's no guilt. Like with you understanding this procedure and doing everything you can, acting professionally in situations, that's all I need of from you. So it's you should not feel any pressure to do any more than you're already required to do. A few people, however, might have more time than many of us. Some people might feel like they have a flexibility in the evenings, flexibility on weekends. They might have a skill that could be necessary in situations of high stress, like somebody speaks Spanish, or you might have some legal background, whatever. Then, if you feel like you can be an active participant, do reach out to our office and we can add you to that rapid response team. Because what can happen in that rapid response team is that all of a sudden one of the members says, so and so from third grade, one of our students came and mentioned that this is happening or that is happening. Somebody needs to go check with that family. We want to do a home visit over there, or we want to check with. And then all of a sudden we realize there's an urgent need for whatever related to immigration or peripherally related to immigration. Like all of a sudden you lost one of the caregivers and now there's no food, or somebody's just crying and needs emotional support or something like that. we need people to mobilize quickly to immediately say, okay, we might have 30 people in the rapid response team. 5 of us are ready to go at any given time. So if you feel like it's chances are that you will most of the time not be available to do that, that's fine. It, it's okay. You can help in many other ways. If you are one of those few people that can have the flexibility to jump on, like, you know 1 out of 10 times, then feel free to reach out and join the rapid response team. This team has been very instrumental, not only in addressing immediate needs, but so far, but also in sharing information that maybe is not appropriate to be sharing widely. And so I feel pretty good about this team. One important thing that sometimes we forget is what information we require of families, how we store it, and what we do with that information. That is a pretty critical part of the policy and these procedures. This is nothing new. By law, you should not be sharing anything with anyone unless you're authorized to do so, and unless there's a very good educational reason for why sharing that information is necessary. And that's federal law. Violating it is a very serious thing. Uh, but what this policy adds is the fact that sometimes schools ask for information that we're not required to ask. Did you know that we're not even required to ask for someone's social security number? We're not required. There's other ways to to be able to enroll someone without being so intrusive with some of our questioning. Nothing in federal law requires that we gather certain types of information. And one thing that we are absolutely not required to gather is immigration status. We, by law, and the Supreme Court has spoken on this, we are to educate every child. Doesn't matter if their family are citizens, residents, visa holders, asylees, or have no documents. It doesn't matter. Every child is eligible for an education in our schools, and we will abide by that. Not only because it's the right thing, but it's just the law. And so asking somebody for their immigration status is there has to be a really good reason for that, because we're not there's no difference between one status or the other for enrollment. There are some very specific cases where trusted staff, and we know who those are, might ask for that, and then family might volunteer that information for some very specific things that are in order to support that same family in an immediate way. But only trusted and authorized staff should be able to do that, and chances are I would know when that is happening. And as soon as that information, we stop needing that information, we're done with what we were doing, then that record is destroyed. We if somebody were to come and demand that we give them information about some family and their immigration status, hopefully that's nowhere to be found, because we never kept it. We might have used it for a little while we were working on whatever we were supporting them with, but then that did not stay recorded. That is important to know also, because you, even if it's not recorded somewhere, you might have knowledge of somebody's immigration status. That is a protected type of information as well, and you may not share it with anyone. And it is a pretty serious thing. Many people believe that this is a political decision that you're making, whether to turn in an illegal into the authorities or not. It's absolutely not. If you turn in information to authorities that was acquired by you because of the privileges that you have as an employee of the school district, if we were to find that that is the case, not only would we fire you, because that's that's a pretty straightforward thing, you would also be referred to the authorities, because that would be a violation of federal law. So I'm not being nice about that because it's an extremely serious thing. And many people, I've found that there are people in the country that sometimes forget that this is not about politics. This is not about, oh, it's because I disagree with the illegals, then I can do this or do that. No, actually, sometimes some people have still rights, and those rights are protected by federal law. Not to say, not to even mention the Constitution, but explicit law, and this is one of those cases. Moving forward, some of these things are one-time measures like changing our FERPA policy and the procedures. All of that has been done. I'm glad to say that we're done with that. Um, let's keep moving on. Our district liaison officer, just as a reminder, it has Jason's photo here, but it's Sasha now. And Sasha goes through specific training, and Sasha and I and our offices are in great coordination when it comes to these things. I cannot go into details, but I will say that the last incident that we had, I was very proud to be working with Sasha because she behaved in the exact way that we would hope our local district liaison officer would behave, which is it's about protecting our students rather than protecting some outside entity, and I'm very grateful for that. So those expectations are clearly laid out here, but even more importantly, I think our local district liaison officer understands these expectations and executes them well so far. And this is where it gets fun because it's what most people are interested in, and it's what most people imagine when they think of a policy like this one. What happens if they come knocking on our doors? Well, this is what happens. Remember, pause, involve, protect. But chances are that they will come knocking through our main entry because no other door should be open, unlocked, and nobody should be coming. Nobody. But this is a practice. It has been our standard practice for a while now. Nobody's coming through any doors except for the main one, unless you have a badge. Sure, you can come through other doors. You already know we have all the labels. All of our classroom spaces where children are labeled private learning spaces. That's in case if we ever, hopefully not, if we ever have to go to court and say somebody intruded into a space that was a private learning space without an appropriate judicial warrant, then that's an additional layer of protection that we can have as an entity. Nobody should be going into those spaces other than authorized personnel and students. And that is actually said in the labels that we put all around the building. And before we get into the other parts, just a reminder that no child or no student is supposed to speak with anybody who's not authorized to be around the students, especially in exterior areas, because it would be very easy for somebody to just go by the back fields and start interacting with one of our students. We have active supervision over every single one of our students at all times, not only for this, but for at all other times, all other reasons. This is nothing new. No child in the district should be left unsupervised. There should be eyes on children at all times as long as they are under our care, engaging in something that is school sponsored. And during the school day, everything is we're in charge of every child during the school day. And even after the school day, if it's after school program, if it's sports, whatever it is, if their family expect them or believe that they are under the care of the school district, then they should be under the care of the school district. We don't just let people, students, wander around on their own. So this is very important reminder for all sorts of reasons, but especially for this, or in critically for this case as well, because sometimes an agent may not need to come into the schools. They could just do their business outside because we don't have fences around our buildings. Any requests have to be denied right away by any immigration enforcement agents. And the only person that can authorize access will be the superintendent. And if I'm ever not allowed or able to do that, then we have an internal protocol for that, which usually is reaching out to council and whoever my designee is would make that decision. But chances are most employees of the WSD do not have authorization to allow somebody who is an immigration agent to come into the building without having first received authorization from um, the administration. And that means making somebody wait. That's perfectly fine. They can decide, officers can decide that they don't want to wait and they want to destroy the door. That's not up to us. Um, and we will probably establish the protocols that we already have practiced for unauthorized intruders into the building. If Kathy were not to be there monitoring who enters, or for whatever reason, or you happen to be the person there, I don't know, all sorts of things could happen, but who knows? We need to ask for a judicial warrant for somebody wanting to enter the facilities, and if they're not able to furnish a judicial warrant, then that's a no, and then you contact the superintendent. But if they are able to, that doesn't mean we let them in right away. We still wait. And again, they can demand to enter right away because they have a judicial warrant, etc., etc. You're not a lawyer. We're not lawyers. We're not able uh, to know properly whether something is correct, and so our lawyers have to look at it. So even if people claim to have a judicial warrant, then you accept it, or whatever, you call whoever you want to call if you're not an administrator, and we very quickly will make sure that our lawyers have eyes on that. We're not going to intentionally delay someone. We will just delay somebody asking for access, as so that we can contact our lawyers as fast as possible so that they can immediately review that, and we will again not delay more than necessary, but we will also not just give people immediate entry into the building without having done our due diligence. As always, a reminder, you don't have to do anything. Pause is sometimes pause. You can just, if somebody who you believe might be an agent is asking you questions, telling you to do things, you don't have to do anything. You can just freeze if you want, or be quiet. Anything beyond that, it will be your own choice. But you are not, the district certainly is not requiring you to do anything. It is not requiring you to say anything. In the case that agents were to enter the building, even if they didn't wait for a warrant to be reviewed, even if they didn't wait for authorization and all that, we do not obstruct. We do not push back. Uh, we do not do anything. We do not do anything that can make it look like we are intentionally trying to obstruct, and definitely don't do something that will put you in immediate danger. You know, we know, we've seen it on TV, we've seen it happen even in previous administrations. Things can get pretty dicey pretty quickly, and you should not put yourself in harm's way. But do not confront, at least not in a way that you wouldn't just anybody else. If you are used to seeing, say, a person who's clearly not an employee, and if you usually ask them, like, did you check in? Do you have a visitor's pass? Then you can do that, but no more than that. Once it's obvious that either they don't want to engage or they say, no, I don't have a pass, then ask them to get a pass. If they don't want it, then that's the end of it. You go quickly to the administration, go to anybody who you can go to, and say there are unauthorized people in the building. Like, and we go from there. If you do choose to say something, you can just say, I do not consent, or this is a private space, and that is if somebody goes into your classroom or the area where you are. But like I said before, you can choose not to say anything, not to do anything. And you should definitely not physically obstruct. I cannot emphasize that enough. If you do witness some sort of abuse, because it could happen, um, consider, we're not requiring anybody to do anything again, but consider verbally intervening from a distance, until you are ordered to stop or somebody says anything. But consider also recording, and this is the part where I'm not asking you to consider, I'm requiring you to immediately, and as quickly as quickly as it's safe, to go and notify the administration, notify Me if you can, but if not, administration, and that should be communicated pretty quickly, as quickly as we're able and safe to do so. If somebody does remove a child, which is extremely unlikely, or a young person, it's extremely unlikely that that the authorities will remove a student from the space of learning. But I hope that that continues to be just as unlikely for the foreseeable future. But we don't know where things are going, and I'm not here to promise anybody anything. I'm not in a position to do that. Um, if that were to happen, then document as quickly as possible. Involve. Again, that's one of our three big words. Do not obstruct. Continue to accompany that person, that student, for as long as it's safe. Like I said in the previous point, consider intervening verbally. If you have been trained in know your rights, say the person's rights out loud. Consider reading up on other things you can do when you witness that, with the consideration that you are in a slightly different position in that moment because you are a staff member who's supposed to be taking care of that student. So you don't just keep that information to yourself. You need to involve the administration immediately because a student has been literally removed from your watch, and that is a very serious thing. Something like that. Again, we're talking about some of the most extreme things that could happen, and because they're so extreme, they're also the least likely to happen. But we don't want to be caught off guard and never have talked about these things. Something like that can affect, will affect your immediate community emotionally quite a bit, and we will obviously set a lot of things in motion for that reason. But in the moment, um, we might, the communication is going as fast as possible, but there might be an immediate need in that moment, and sometimes even if we feel powerless, there's not much we can do other than just remain and accompany somebody who's going through something, and provide them just additional pair of eyes, additional voice, some emotional support, some reassurance that they're not alone. And but again, I don't want to hypothesize too much. Just that reminder, the protect measure and the possible protect sometimes doesn't mean, again, getting into harm's way or anything, but there are many other ways in which we can help people feel safer. We had to be reminded of this just a couple of weeks ago, and it's important to remember the school bus. Inside the school bus is the school. It's considered a private learning space, much like your classroom, and it should be treated as such. And incursion into the school bus that's not authorized by anybody, not just the immigration agents, but even a parent, anybody, is strictly prohibited, and it should be reported immediately to the administration. If a student also does not feel safe to leave the school bus, even if we got to their bus stop, that's okay. They can remain in the bus, and the bus driver and the aide in that bus are supposed to bring the student back here until we figure out next steps for that student. So that's it in a nutshell. If an intrusion, or like if authorities were ever to enter our school building, we would most likely consider it enough reason to activate a hold protocol. That means the incident command gets activated. Doesn't mean that the people in the command will interact with the authorities or will tell them what. It doesn't mean any of that. It simply means we will set the protocols in motion, which means everybody's to stay put in their classrooms. Of course, if there is like something that feels more dangerous than that, we would probably just consider it. We would call for an options-based drill, but that would be an extreme. Most likely, that will not happen, and instead, I'm assuming immigration officials would go straight directly to some classroom, directly to some office, and do what they need to do, so that we would know exactly where they're going and what the extent of the operation is. So at minimum, we would have a hold in place, ask everybody to remain where they are. At worst, if things are getting out of hand, then our local law enforcement, in coordination with our district liaison officer, tell us that it's appropriate to go into a different kind of protocol, like the options-based like we've practiced, then we should leave that as an option as well. But that would be in the case of an extreme situation. I'd like to emphasize this part. Teachers and staff are encouraged to make tangible efforts in continuing to elevate the sense of belonging for all students, regardless of immigration status, without directly exposing anyone. From readings to relationships, we all play an important role in making the WSD a truly welcoming place for all. And I mentioned this principle before. This is what protection really looks like. It's not, protection is not just what we imagine in an emergency situation. Protection happens right now, today, in the classroom, in the hallways, in the way we talk to students, in the things we say, in the things we expose them to, in our lesson plans, in our differentiation, in all sorts of choices, from pedagogical choices to relational choices we make. Protection should be the signature of what we do in the Winooski schools, to remember that every student here is our own child, is our own young person, deserving of the respect and preserving of the dignity that any other student is entitled to. We have a really nice, I really like this section because it even gives a script for educating young students on how to think about this. So if you teach or work with young students, I recommend that you take a look at what page is this? Page 27 of the protocol, of the procedures. This was done in collaboration with some of our staff members here. It's great. When we're in a regular school day, it's pretty straightforward what to do in situations of encounters with authorities, but there are other things that still count as school. And like I said, the buses are one example, but you could also be playing sports way back there. You could be in an after-school program. You could be in a field trip, right? And in all those cases, most of the things in this procedure still apply. So there are a couple exceptions to that. The one exception, for example, would be that you bring our students into an institution for a field trip, like a museum, and that museum doesn't have a policy like ours that says we're going to protect students in this way or that way. You could enter even a space that has a policy to say we will not cooperate. We will collaborate willingly, even if we're not legally required, with immigration agents, and we will report anybody who we suspect of being in the country undocumented, and that means everybody who looks like me or anybody who's brown, because that's the policy. That's apparently an unspoken policy for many people and many people in power. And so it's a reminder to be mindful of where we're taking our students, what our plan is to keep them safe, and to also learn who our partners are, which ones are better prepared than others, and maybe consider partnering with people and institutions that are ready for the type of students and communities that we serve and that we belong to. And that's actually the end of the procedure. I'm sorry this took a little longer than I expected, but I still invite you to go to the parts of the procedure that speak to your role and speak to your interests or your questions. And if you don't find something, if you don't find what you're looking for, then feel free to reach out, because chances are the question that you have will probably help us as well, and they could even improve the procedure that we have.